Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and we are going to talk about the concept that imagination does not have a budget, and why you should run high magic and never run low magic with Dungeons & Dragons, and why you should absolutely avoid OSE, DCC, Worlds Without Numbers, Five Torches Deep, Torchbearer, and Pathfinder. Here we go. All right. Yeah, let's get into it. All right. So, okay. Imagination does not have a budget. Why are we talking about this today? Well, I have been watching Benny on Comic Story, right? Now, Comic Historian is absolutely fantastic channel. If you haven't been there, treat yourself. I'm sure some of you have seen it. So what Benny does on Comic Historian is he takes comic books and he actually shows you all the art from the pages, and he shows you all the art from the pages, and you get to enjoy and you get to enjoy the actual story, and he does all the voices, and it's like a video. It's a comic book turned into a video, right? Absolutely fantastic. One of the best things on the internet. So I've been listening to Benny, but not watching his comic book story turns. I watch those on a weekend sometime, but I've been listening to them, right? Almost as podcasts. I actually have been listening to Benny when he's talking about the comic book industry recently, and I've been doing it a lot. Well, why is that, right? Why am I listening to a guy talk about comic books rather than listening all the great Dungeons & Dragons commentary that I usually listen to? Well, great commentary, great Dungeons & Dragons commentary is dead right now, right? Like, it doesn't exist, right? Ginny D, what's she doing right now? I think she's deciding if she's going to return to Dungeons & Dragons now that the coast is clear, right? What's Nerd Immersion doing? The same thing he's been doing for a year. Actually, he's now, his last video was the Pathfinder 2 beginner box. Let me betray every single person who gave me my 100K sub, right? Pathfinder didn't give you your 100K sub button, Nerd Immersion. D&D did, right? And your thank you to everyone who watched your D&D commentary is now you betraying Dungeons & Dragons to talk about Pathfinder junk. Like, that's not cool, man. That is not cool, right? Professor DM. Oh, wait, is it Professor Dungeon Master or is it Professor DM? Oh, I don't know, right? Like, yeah, exactly, right? Professor Dungeon Master, great channel. What's he talking about now, right? All these channels are good time guys, good time gals, right? I'm with Dungeons & Dragons when it's easy. I'm with Dungeons & Dragons when there's no cost. I'm with Dungeons & Dragons when there's a benefit to me. But the moment I feel the slightest twinge of discomfort, oh, I will definitely abandon Dungeons & Dragons, right? I'm not gonna guardian it. If it's not doing every single thing I want, then it can go kick rocks, right? So great D&D commentary is dead right now, right? I literally don't know a single channel that has strong, sound Dungeons & Dragons commentary right now, right? Except mine, right? I don't listen to myself. Actually, I do listen to myself. I listen to all my videos once, right? After I've made them, right? Yeah. So, but that's quality control. That's not like, yeah. I do like to listen to my old videos. I watch my videos every now and then, right? And I always watch them for quality control. I'll go throw this out there. I just did it this week, right? Sometimes I overshoot. Sometimes I overshoot, right? D&D Be Gone was a massive overshoot, right? And when I overshoot, I'll listen to a video and go, "Oh man, you gotta rein it back, buddy," and I'll delete it. I did it this week. I've done this with no less than 100 videos, right? I'll cut the video and go, like you're a little too intense and adamant on this one. Let's delete that and recut it, right? So it happens, right? All right. So yeah. So basically, yeah, it's really tough. So there's just nothing to listen to right now, which is really kind of makes me incredibly sad, right? But one of the things that Benny said was he was talking about one of the worst problems in comic books right now is many comic books, and this is openly being discussed, right? 30 Nights, 30 Nights of Days, I think that's what it's called. It was a graphic novel about vampires in Alaska, right? And these vampires would go to Alaska because the sun doesn't show for like a whole month up there, right? For months and months, right? And they could just wreak havoc wherever they wanted, right? So years ago, probably like 10 years ago, maybe 20 now, right? This graphic novel came out and everybody was like, oh my gosh, this graphic novel was perfect as a script for a movie, and it got made into a movie, right? And so now a ton of comic book writers are writing comic books that are written with all the cool stuff stripped out, and everything that goes into the comic book is going to be easy to put on screen, right? Now, this is terrible, right? This is really bad because the reason why this is really bad is comic books are a medium where there is no, and this is the issue, right? There's no imagination. There's no budget on there's no budget on imagination, right? In Dungeons and Dragons, as dungeon masters, we can put anything on the air quotes screen, right? Anything, right? And so we can have, if we want a magic hammer, we can say that there's, a green rune on one side and a red rune on the other side, right? Whereas what's happening in comics right now is they will specifically make the aspects in their story suck, so it's cheap to put on screen, right? And so that's a problem in comics, right? That's a problem in comics. We also have a similar problem in we specifically have a similar problem in specifically Dungeons and Dragons, right? And in its horrible retro clones. By the way, I'm just going to say it now. I massively stand against retro clones. I no longer support retro clones in any way. I don't consider Index Card RPG a retro clone. It's not. It's an independent game, right? It's not a retro clone. It's not made on some OGL junk platform, right? But I'm flat out against retro clones at this point because I think it's a parasite that wants to kill the host. That's why I stand against retro clones. New policy, J. Scott Garibay. I stand against every retro clone that was ever made. Like, white box. I don't care what it was, right? Like Worlds Without Numbers, DCCC, OSC. I ain't having it, right? Like it's not for me, right? And I think, and I truly believe retro clones are a parasite that are trying to kill the host. That's just where I am today, right? And that 100% comes out of the 2023 Manic Panic, right? Because I believe all these games, they saw the trouble that D&D was in, and none of them did a thing to help, right? And it's totally inappropriate and just horrific, right? So here's where this touches base for Dungeons and Dragons, right? If you're running Dungeons and Dragons, run high magic because you can, right? You don't need to do Dirt Farmer, low magic, low fantasy, right? And the reason why is we don't have a budget, right? Like, we can put anything we want on screen. We can make it so that, our player characters have a magic item in every slot, right? Not just three attunement, right? Like, 3 rings on each finger, a slot on the head, a slot on for the necklace, boot slot, belt slot. You could put 15 magic items on a player character, right? And we should. And the reason why is we can. We're not constrained by a budget, right? And Benny said it is an absolutely terrible mistake for these comic book writers to be writing sad sack suck stories, right? With toned down elements, right? Just so it's going to look good on the screen, because they have readers that they can make it look good on the page, right? And they are abandoning the comic book reader to embrace the Hollywood suit who hasn't even shown yet, right? And so this is my point. If you're a dungeon master, bring the heavy now, bring the awesome now, right? And low fantasy sucks, right? And having 3 attunement slots sucks. Give them 15, right? Like, just make the limit the slots, right? And do high fantasy with lots of with glowing monsters, and just bring the awesome now in your Dungeons and Dragons. Now, let's tick them off. OSE is 100% against this, right? The game is structured from the gate, right, to be low fantasy, right? DCC, low fantasy, right? Worlds Without Number. That leaves room for high fantasy, but it doesn't specifically embrace it, right? And I think Dungeons & Dragons has specifically embraced it with shows and films, and that is and product, right? The Funko Pop connection, the Lego connection, and the Magic the Gathering connection. This is all high magic, right? And so D&D has told us in many ways, they've made it possible to run low magic with the book, but they've shown us through all the other ways that they communicate what they want us to do with Dungeons & Dragons, that it should be high fantasy, right? So Worlds Without Number, not as much of a culprit as OSE, not as much of a culprit as DCC. Five Torches Deep, oh my gosh, the worst. Like, oh, do you have room for another torch in your pack? The worst low fantasy, right? The like forcing your players to have a suck game so that you can deliver, you're like, oh, I really want to make sure you're a dirt farmer and I'm the only powerful person at the table. That's what dirt farmer, that's really what dirt farmer characters are, right? He's like, oh, you have a hoe, you don't even get a battle axe. It is bad. It is bad, right? So, I really don't like it, right? And so basically, you really, let's get all the way there. Pathfinder, same as World Without Number. You can run a high fantasy game with Pathfinder. I think, but it hasn't given any other signals, right? Through products or the big screen or the small screen, because Pathfinder sucks and doesn't have any big screen, small screen, or other products to send the message through, right? Like, yeah. So avoid these retro clones. Get with the real deal, right? Because we need you to protect the brand. We need to protect the brand of Dungeons & Dragons. Not the product, not the concept, the brand, which has been guardianed by TSR, guardianed by WotC, and guardianed by Hasbro. Never, ever guardianed by the OGLers. Abandoned as fast as it possibly could have been by the OGLers. All that is my humble opinion, every word of it. I'm ready to hear your humble opinion when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.